Welcome to the Always On podcast. I'm your host, Duncan MacPherson. On this podcast, our objective is to empower our audience, which are very high caliber fee-for-service professionals, to always be working on their business and on themselves, personally and professionally. And on today's podcast, I had a great conversation with Jeff Ambrose. He is a Pareto certified business consultant, and he is also what I would call the recruiter of the future. And by that, I mean he takes a consultant's role in being in the sidecar of a financial advisor who is looking to level up and transition to a new environment as predictably as possible with the best results possible. And Jeff is unrivaled in terms of his ability because he has this practice management and relationship management specialization. So hopefully you like this podcast. And if you do, please like and share, tell your colleagues. And if you have any ideas for themes and topics down the road, just let us know. Thanks for listening. Very excited to have a conversation with an unrivaled leader around the theme of what we call the advisor flight plan, which ultimately is a proven process to ensure that you maximize your last move. I've talked to many financial advisors in the last few years, especially, and this is driven by the evolution of the industry, changes in the marketplace in general, demography. And I've talked to these advisors about ensuring that they're in an environment that is best for them, their team, and of course, their clients. And I want to take a very methodical, thoughtful approach to this, but ultimately, in the spirit of beginning with the end in mind, my goal is to ensure that, especially for an advisor who's thinking about maybe winding down after the move over the course of the next 5 years. I want the next 5 years to be their best 10 years, if you know what I mean, as fulfilling and rewarding as possible. So to get there, I've got a gentleman on the line with me named Jeff Ambrose. You're probably familiar with Jeff. He's been in the industry for 25 years, very well respected. Has had a number of different jobs and roles in the space, but I'd like to think that today, Jeff, you are exactly where you were meant to be. This is a calling, and you are a true consultant in terms of enabling financial professionals to land on what is their best environment and make that transition as predictable and seamless as possible. So, Jeff, right up front, thanks for being here, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Okay, so we talk about advisor flight plan, and I want everybody to think of this as almost like a flight school simulator, and the progression is okay, pre-flight checklist. Okay, that includes due diligence and just getting organized, and then of course cleared for takeoff. Then of course, what does it look like to actually make the move and then to land, and then what it looks like once the dust settles and you're on the other side. So, Jeff, let's talk first. What is it that you're seeing that is motivating people to consider their options and actually make a change?
You got a bunch of different reasons out there, and I think it depends on where advisors are in their stage of their career at the moment. For some folks, they feel that they've outgrown their firm. Other folks, they're looking to go from a W-2 into owning their own P&L. And for other folks, it even comes down to looking for a succession plan that more meets their needs and where they currently are. And I think that those would be kind of the three big ones out there. You've outgrown your firm, you feel that your succession plan isn't where it should be, or you want to take control of your business and own your P&L.
Yeah, that's perfect, and that lines up exactly with what we see on our end, and especially this premise now where it's no longer a book of business, it's an actual business, and just emphasizing enterprise value, maximizing your life's work That is obviously a huge driver for many people. Let's talk about just the due diligence exercise, how you consult with a financial advisor to land on what environment is best for them. I've got my perspective. Let's start with yours.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to advisors out there. There isn't probably going to be an advisor that listens to this that hasn't had that little voice in the back of their head ask them, am I in the right place? Is this where I should be? Is there maybe somewhere else that's better? And the reality is that you really do owe it to yourself and you owe it to your clients to quiet that. And I'll start with saying that anytime I have a first conversation with an advisor, I tell them, listen, my goal is not to tell you that all roads lead to the firm that I work for. My goal is to help you quiet that voice. There's a line that I love that you use, which is you can't have one foot on the dock and one foot on the boat. You got to make that decision, right? And for me, it's about walking advisors through that to say that at the end of the due diligence process, your goal is to either find out, yes, this place is the right place for me that I'm going to, or the place that I'm at, it's going to give you the confidence to go, I'm exactly where I should be right now. And that's really the whole point behind the due diligence process. It's not that you're looking to immediately jump, right? It's, am I in the right place? And you very well may come to the conclusion that you are. Congratulations. And now you can take that focus, which you desperately need more of in your life, and focus it back to the things that matter most, which is your clients. And now you can put that to bed. So for me, that is the very first step, is getting folks to understand, hey, there's a question, let's answer it. And then if the answer at the end comes down to, I need to leave, well, then we can discuss what happens after that. But let's start with just, how should that process look? From the moment I get that question, how do I get to that point of my confidence answer of yes here or yes somewhere else?
Okay, excellent. So let's go deeper into that and the exercise, especially for the advisor who is thinking about enterprise value. So I like to think in terms of, okay, you want to be in an environment where you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. Okay, so you're backstopped by a solid blue chip firm with structure, process, and they're client centered in their philosophy. And then, of course, just being realistic, you want to be in an environment where it's the most of the good and the least of the bad. I don't know if you've seen perfection out there, but I think that's how you temper expectations, is what's the most of the good and the least of the bad. And so Jeff, let's get into that in a little bit more detail.
So I think that brings in a pretty good point. To me, that comes down to the perspective, right? And this is something that advisors have to maintain throughout the course. You have to maintain a certain perspective, or you need to make sure you have the right perspective in the beginning of this process, in the middle, and then at the end. And what I mean by that is, for me, it comes down to this. There are things that you run from, and then there's things that you run to.
Mm.
And it might actually be, in some cases, that what you're running from and what you're running to are the same, right? However, the way that you position that in your mind and the way that you will eventually, which we'll talk about at one point in this conversation, about how you position that to your clients, is a key factor in whether or not you have a successful transition from one firm to another. It also answers a question when we take clients through Pareto coaching. One of the first things that we have a team do, which is my favorite exercise, and it's actually, as far as I'm concerned, probably one of the hardest, is we have them do ideal life. And what that ideal life program is, as you know, is it's about getting advisors to think about why, right? Okay, you want to go through this program, you want to process orient your practice, you want to grow at a higher pace, you have all these goals that you want to hit. The question is why? I shared a story before where I was coaching a team and they were doing about 2.5 million in production. And on the back, I just happened to see on the Zoom call that their goal was to do 3 million that year. And I asked them, I said, 3 million, is that your goal? They said, yeah. I said, why? And they're like, well, it's $500,000 more. And I go, okay, congratulations. I'm like, I could do the math, but that's not what I'm asking. I said, why? And they started to laugh a little bit. And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, this isn't an overly complicated question. What I'm asking you is what does that $500,000 mean? Like, why that number? Why not just a million? Why not 2 billion? What does that number mean to you? And that's what ideal life is. It's breaking down that. What is this actually going to mean to me as opposed to being on a whiteboard? How is that going to impact my life? How is that going to impact my quality, my family, this and that? You have to take that same approach of answering the why when it comes to moving. So, for instance, I'll give a couple examples. Someone might say, you know what, I want a higher payout. We'll go with the easiest one, payout. I want a higher payout. Okay, congratulations. So you're going to increase your pay 25, 30, 40, 50%, depending on which way you go. Why is that important? Well, I'm going to make more money. Okay. Well, how would you relay that? How do you think that can benefit your clients? And when you start thinking about all these running from as opposed to a running to, well, all of a sudden you start thinking, well, that would allow me to invest more in my practice. Well, who would that benefit? Will that benefit my clients? Right? Things like I'm running from a place where compliance is really hard and doesn't allow me to do the things that I want to do. So I don't want to deal with that anymore. I'm running from a lower payout. I'm running from management that I don't like. I'm running from a strategic vision at a firm that doesn't align with me. I'm running from a lack of support. I'm running from this. Well, all of those are negative items, and I am not going to discount that. Those are all legitimate reasons why you should run from something. But imagine telling that to your clients, well, all these negative reasons why I'm leaving. Let's look at what you're running to. And when you look at what the flip side is, if you look at what the other side of that look like, it's a much brighter picture. When you run from things, it's dark. When you're running to something, it's light. And when you start from an advisor standpoint, start thinking about, get rid of the negative thoughts, get rid of the things you're running from and go, okay, I make that move and I solve for that. But what does that actually mean now in my price? How does that look? All of a sudden your perspective begins to change. And now you're not walking to something. That's why I say you're running to it. You are running to get there. So change perspective. Stop focusing on what you're running from. It's a problem, but what are you running to? And that's the first part I tell every advisor.
Okay, so I can feel the energy amping up here, and I neglected to say in the preamble, Jeff, as everyone can probably gather now, a Pareto certified practice management and business development coach and consultant. He's put in the work, a lot of mileage, and that's part of his value proposition. What I love about that philosophically, Jeff, is what the exercise reveals. Because again, early in conversations that we have with advisors who are considering their options, they tend to focus on what they're lacking. And that takes on a different form of energy. And what we want them to focus on is what are their unmet needs and what environment's going to contribute best to their own self-actualization. The law of environment's powerful. We are products of our environment. And we want to be in an environment that will just propel us to the best version of ourselves. But, finding that sweet spot between, what we get, who we become, and what makes us valuable, that's a great exercise. And again, when we move away from what we're lacking, here's what's an interesting observation I've made. Remember, if you're fixated on an environment that's not in your best interest, I mean, if that's what you're zeroing in on, you're kind of guilty by association because you decided to be there. Okay, so you said it best. You're outgrowing the environment. And when you give yourself permission to evolve and grow, I mean, there's just a natural ending to that. Now let's focus on an environment that is better. So excellent. And Jeff, I just have to say, I mean, over the years, I've been doing this for a long time. I've met with many recruiters, and frankly, I mean, respectfully, the agenda is pretty straightforward. The incentive's pretty straightforward. They are opportunistically trying to move their own needle by working with somebody to move firms. Your perspective is different. You are a bona fide, legitimate coach and consultant, and you are at peace with what decision they make, whether it's with you and your environment or someone else. You want to leave a profit in their lives and help them come to their own conclusions of what's in their best interest, their team's best interest, and their client's best interest. And I think that's emerging in this conversation. I hope everybody really grabs onto that. Okay, so let's get into this. Let's talk about due diligence a little bit more in detail. What is your format, your process? Give me some of the questions you ask to help somebody do their due diligence and land in an environment that makes the most sense.
Absolutely. So I always tell advisors when I talk to them, you have about a dozen to 15 questions you're going to ask me. There's about 50 that you should be.
Mm.
And that's the reality of it, is that as an advisor, if you're looking to transition, be inquisitive and be humble. Make sure that you are aligning yourself with someone that is asking questions for you. Keep in mind that in the recruiting space, an advisor, the reason why I've always taken a consultative approach is because I understand the gravity of what an advisor changing firms means. For them, this is a once in a lifetime event, maybe twice. For me or a recruiter, it's a Thursday, right? It's just another day. And it gives you as a recruiter the insight of what it really takes. So you have to really be a steward to that advisor in making sure that they have the questions that they should. For me, I built out a roadmap for advisors that I send them, and it's a checklist. And how I positioned it was I took all of my years throughout this business, combined that with what I knew when it came to recruiting and moving teams, and said, if I'm sitting in your shoes, here are the questions that I have, but what are the questions that I should answer? Should I be asking, I should say. And those questions are very, very detailed. You need to know things like, it's easy. The easy ones are, okay, I want to know what my economics are going to be. Okay, great. But what platforms? How are those platforms run? Does my product list match up with the product list of the company that I'm going to? Maybe I have a lot of alts. The alternatives exist on that platform.
Right.
So a lot of the advisors will come with some just generic ideas of, okay, well, I run this type of model. Can I do that there? Okay, well, maybe you outsource your models. Do they have agreements with those folks? There's a lot of just the little nitty gritty blocking and tackling stuff that are just the building blocks, the gears that make the business go that you have to check into. Next thing, well, what about technology? Well, technology is huge. Right, that's something you're going to be dealing with every day. So you got to look at things like economics. You got to look at things like technology. You got to look at their compliance. One of the things that I always say when I host advisors to our firm is I will say, I am going to introduce you to someone, and I am so excited to introduce you to this team. And there is no salesperson in the history of financial services that have ever been excited to say this. I cannot wait for you to meet our compliance department. It's never happened. I'm the only person that ever says that. And the reality is I am. You want to make sure that the firm you're going to is going to allow you to connect in a way with your clients that you want to. You want to know what those limitations are. What can I do? What can I not do? So technology, economics, compliance, and the really big one in there is going to be resources, business resources. To maybe tie this in to advisors feeling like they've outgrown their firm, I think that there's been a change in the industry over the past 25 years. I think back to some firms back in the 90s and very early part of this decade existed and then went away at the early part of 2000, that if you look at the model back then of how firms operated, it was a hub and spoke model. And that hub was the advisor. And the firm operated around the advisor and pushed all those resources down to that advisor. And there are some advisors that will be listening to this that will understand that when I say that model has changed a little bit in some places, not all, but there are places that that's changed. And a lot of advisors that come to me feel that they've been in the business for 20 years, 25, 30 years, and they remember that old model. But now the model that they feel is that the hub is now the firm, and the advisor operates around the firm in hopes that the resources get fed out. So you can change firms, but what you better be sure of is that you're going to a partner versus a parking lot. And the difference is a partner has the old hub and spoke model where you as the advisor sit at the center. You are the center of the firm's business and attention, and they feed you the resources. Anyone can custody your assets. Anybody can do that, but that's a parking lot. So that's really what I walk advisors through, understanding the basics of the business, the economics, the compliance, but then it really comes down to business resources and aligning yourself with a firm that really empowers you to be the best version of who you can be.
Okay, so I want everybody to make this connection here. First of all, those resources you talked about, like your checklist and your progression, your format, is any of that available for somebody to peruse just to sort of get their wheels turning a little bit?
And different firms, yes, you would have to reach out to that firm and say, "This is what I'm looking for." I mean, I've built one personally, our firm, but people can absolutely gather that information.
Okay. Well, where I was going with that is a few weeks ago, I was talking to an advisor, and it's very, very preliminary. He's just basically got to the tipping point where he's got his head around saying, you know what, I think I'm ready to explore my options. And I told him to go on to AI and just prompt AI and simply say, look, I'm a financial advisor. I manage this much money. I have this many clients. I have this group of clients in terms of my ideal client profile. This is my overall makeup in terms of my team. I'm considering my options. Give me a process to get my head around this. And within about 3 seconds, there was a pretty amazing framework. But then I said to him, I said, now that you've got this framework, now it's out of your head, you've demystified it, given yourself a progression. You now need a co pilot, or you need a sidecar. You need an accountability partner to basically protect you from yourself, because you're going to go down some of these paths and get so immersed in these conversations. You need somebody to be a voice of reason along with you. So I'm interested in your checklist and your protocol, because advisors, if they want to explore talking to you about being, in their sidecar, um, help them make informed decisions and just even validate what they're thinking. I think it'd be a worthwhile exercise. You mentioned, the evolution of the space. I mean, environment as it relates to due diligence, alts, alternative investments, and all of these new categories that are outside of the traditional process and models. How significant is that now versus 5 years ago?
It, it's a whole new world. I mean, look at the evolution of crypto. It would have been nice if we could all go back 6 years and buy Bitcoin at $1,000, right? It has been a huge transition. And when you think about that from an advisor standpoint, what's your leg up when it comes to investments? Excuse me. You can't just be the traditional Harry Markowitz efficient frontier model. I'm going to do a 60-40 holistic asset allocation, set it and forget it. Not that it's not going to work, but if you're looking for a competitive edge these days and you're looking to stand out, what is the difference if I come to you, if my advisor is at Merrill Lynch or Morgan Stanley or UBS or Wells Fargo, or pick your favorite firm, and I come to your office and I sit down with my statement and you look at it and I'm doing the same type of stuff and I go, yeah, it's pretty much what I would do. I mean, you're kind of behind the eight ball at that point, right? That space is expanded where advisors are acutely aware now of the importance of adding these non-traditional sleeves, the alts, structured notes, products, all sorts of new types of investment vehicles to try to get a little bit more alpha for their clients. So it has grown tremendously over the past 5 years.
Advisors often ask, how do I know where to focus to get the biggest lift in my business? That's exactly what the Practice Management Index, or PMI for short, was designed to answer. PMI is a diagnostic tool built by Pareto Systems to measure the strength of your practice across the 18 key business focus areas that drive growth, scalability, and enterprise value. In just 25 minutes, you'll get a clear snapshot of your strengths and blind spots, plus a roadmap to turn insights into action. Start your assessment today at paretosystems.com/PMI and take the guesswork out of your next move. The link is also in the description of this episode. For a limited time, get the breakdown report for free. Just use coupon code BDR25. That's a $99 value, which gives you access to a detailed list of action items and implementation tools. Now, back to the show.
Well, in the spirit of pattern recognition, I'm talking to more and more advisors, and it's market-driven, where their clients are coming to them because perhaps one of their kids said, do we have any exposure? Are we positioned at all in blockchain? Blockchain's overall market cap today it rivals Nvidia and Apple, and it's bigger than the GDP of Japan. Like, it's a real thing. And many advisors I talk to are completely oblivious, and now they're having clients ask about it. I have clients that are saying that, my brother's telling me that I'm crazy for not having exposure in precious metals. So it's emerging. So again, being enlightened about environment that is open to that is obviously a big deal. Now, let's keep progressing through here. Jeff, what have you seen has been typically the ideal timing and window for an advisor once they say, okay, it's go time, due diligence, get prepared, prime the pump with my clients, transition? What is the perfect window that you've seen?
60 to 90 days.
Okay.
From the time that you to back up I should start doing some due diligence. That due diligence process until you make that decision, that should be between 60 and 90 days. And why I'm going to say that is, I think it would be dependent upon the size of a practice. A smaller practice can probably come to that conclusion a little bit sooner in the process than, let's say, a multi-billion-dollar team with multiple advisors, a CFA, and multiple assistants, which can lead down to another question, which is, okay, who on the team should know about that? And it's, well, pretty much everybody towards the end here. It's a group decision. But that main point is 60 to 90 days. The pitfall that I've seen is that advisors do not get 1 foot off the dock. They stay straddled between the boat and the dock. And they will try to extend due diligence processes out 6 months, 12 months, 18 months out. And they're not doing themselves any favors. If you're going to make a decision on whether or not you need to decide whether you should stay or go, make that a priority. And you can set up a cadence. The questions that we had talked about how you build out that due diligence, which, by the way, to go back 2 seconds, how does an advisor get those questions? You can't find that. You would have to go to an AI. You would have to come to somebody like me that already has them written out. You have a cadence in which you answer those. That should take no more than 90 days. Math.
Okay. All right. And by the way, just to park this for a second, but our framework is PSP. Here are the philosophical considerations about the right environment. Here are and philosophical is their worldview, their mindset, their culture conducive with yours. There's a sequence of questions there. That's the first P. Then the S is strategic. How does this benefit my clients based on their evolving needs and how their thinking has expanded? There's considerations there. So P, S, and then the final P is just the practical, the economics around, obviously, payout, enterprise value considerations, which is massive. So that is our framework. But you're right, AI can assist, but of course, a conversation with someone like Jeff would be a good idea as well. But let's keep going. I'm curious about your thoughts on this. So often, based on the dock and the boat dynamic, I will say to an advisor, okay, I'd like you to hold a client advisory council with 12 of your best clients, not to hint at the fact that you're thinking about a move, but just to read the room and just to ask them 10 questions in a very positive environment with the context that you're striving to level up. So imagine this. You have a room in a golf course or wherever, a restaurant. You invite 12 of your best clients and you say, look, I really value our relationships. My clay is soft. I'm trying to level up and elevate the client experience. The best way to do that is to talk to the people on the receiving end. And these are the questions I want to ask. Here's the agenda, all for the purposes of just raising the bar. Getting a client and seeing your value through their lens and their perspective is incredibly validating. I'm more often than not, it confirms, okay, I need to make a move. It also enables you to plant some incredible seeds because when it is go time, you can point back to the client advisory council and say, that meeting actually prompted me to start considering my options and compare and contrast my current environment, which has served me very well to this point, to other environments. So there's the client advisory council, and then there's also the call rotation. Often I'll say, I'll just simply say to the advisors at the end of every phone call and meeting that you have with a client over the course of the next 30 to 60 days, before you hang up, before you wrap up the meeting, just simply say this: hey, I want to let you know that our team is going through an exercise right now for the purposes of identifying gaps and elevating and raising the bar in terms of our client experience. And over the course of the next several months, I'm going to share with you what some of those observations have been. I'm interested, Jeff, in understanding your perspective, just in terms of the predictive priming, like priming the pump to get a client to just get their head around the concept of change. You're not hinting at anything, you're just planting seeds. Thoughts on Client Advisory Council and the call rotation with those primers?
So that's just, that's gold is what that is, right? So it something you said at the very beginning, which is that it's validating. And I don't know that validating is a good enough, strong enough word to really adequately describe what that actually means. So when I talk to advisors, this is kind of getting to the root of it. The biggest fear that advisors have is, are my clients going to come with me?
Yeah.
Number one fear. So when I talk to advisors through this, I'll ask them, if I ask you what your clients think of you, are you going to start that sentence with, I know my clients think of me this way? Or is that sentence going to start with, I think my clients view me this way? Now, I can say that with 100% certainty, every single advisor has said, I would start that sentence with, I think. And if you don't make a move, or you're not even thinking of making a move and you're listening to this, don't be in that position. You've had relationships with people for 15, 20, 25, 30 years. You might be multi-generational advisor. And you mean to tell me that your response is, I think they would think this of me? Now, chances are how you would finish that sentence, I think my clients view me as X, Y, and Z, you very well may be right. But you should find out. So that client advisory board is so impactful for not only the clients, because it is impactful for them. When your clients start articulating out loud what it is that they really value about you, what they really care about, it reinforces to them personally, wow, he's or she's a really good human being. That's why I have a relationship. But for you, it begins to create calm and peace. And you begin to realize that people aren't with you because of the logo that happens to be on your business card. They're with you because it's you. And you could swap that logo out for anything you want. Your clients truly view you as a partner. So that client advisory board is so impactful. The second part, which you had talked about, which is, what can we do better? What is it that you would like to see? Not a question most people want to ask. It's vulnerable. hey, what can we do better? As much as people will go into a conversation with that, anybody that asks that question only wants to hear one word: nothing. There's nothing you can possibly do. However, I would I would argue that getting something besides that, pushing back to a client when they say, "No, you're great, Duncan. There's nothing you could be doing better." I would make a very strong case that pushing back and saying, "While I appreciate that, nobody's perfect. Nothing is perfect. And each and every year, we strive to provide a better experience, a more meaningful, impactful relationship for our clients. There has to be something that we can be doing better. We would love your help in trying to do that. What can we do?" That is what is going to not only help you elevate your current practice, but as you mentioned, what a great way to come back and tell clients, this was kind of your idea. Right? When I looked at all the things that you folks said to me, I realized that I had an issue. And my issue was that the firm that I was currently aligned with was not going to allow me to do the things I needed to do to bring you all to the level that you deserve and the level that you wanted. So that client advisory council is something you should be doing on an annual basis, at least with your clients. But again, remember, push back. We all hear what we want to hear. Push back and make your clients really become part of the process.
Okay, so this is very important. Now, first of all, we have a campaign at Pareto Systems. It's called the Next 90 Days. If you want to squash your fears and demystify how you're perceived and how you're described, and to prime that pump to make it predictive and just plant those seeds, contact Jeff on LinkedIn. He has access to that campaign. It will add immense predictability and reassurance about in terms of how you feel, and get your head around the whole concept of familiarity and fatigue, because loyalty fatigue and the law of familiarity is a powerful force, and you want to get out in front of that. And you will see an incredible silver lining where you will rejuvenate your client relationships and rejuvenate yourself in terms of your purpose and conviction and confidence around your role. And I know that for a fact because I've seen it firsthand. Now, again, Jeff, I mean, we've seen advisors for whatever reason. It was a very abrupt transition, 30 days or less for whatever reason. You said that the ideal is 60 to 90 days. For some advisors, they even stretch it out to 6 months or longer just to make sure they've dug their well. And again, that due diligence, because many firms today, they're totally bought into that brand within a brand. You talk about the logo of the custody firm, the overarching firm. That's a brand, but you want your clients to be more bought into your brand that is within that brand, and that is engineered in a reframing exercise. Um, but again, we cover that in the Blue Square method. Jeff has that as part of his repertoire. But let's keep going through the progression here. So there's the due diligence and just the exercise of getting your head around, where am I going to go? Okay, there's that. Then there's, okay, let's get prepared and prime the pump for clients. Now it's go time. It's time to take off and launch this thing. What are some of the considerations? What's some of the messaging and positioning? Let's get into that.
So this is where the nerves kick in. This is when everybody's nervous, and it's day zero, right? That is the day that you wake up. You've spent the past 60, 90 days doing due diligence. You've made a decision. Now, however long you need before you make that move, totally fine. But you're going to make that decision. And then what's going to happen is you're going to walk into your office and you're going to resign that morning. And then you're going to go to your new office and you're going to sit down. And there is going to be a team of people from that new firm waiting for you. And everyone's sitting around a table and they're waiting for your licenses to transfer. So you're just going to sit there staring at a screen, and it's nerve wracking. Now, what you're worried about now is now you got to start calling your clients, because that's the next thing. By 10 a.m., hopefully those licenses hit and you're good. And now you got green lighted and it's time for you to start making those calls. This is when that client advisory board comes into play. This is also when, because you're going to tell them these are the reasons I move, but there are reasons that your clients aren't thinking of, right? So at the beginning of this conversation, we talked about things that you run from and things that you run to. I said in the beginning of this conversation that you need to change your own perspective to stop focusing on the things that you're running from and think about your life and your business as a, what am I running to? What am I gaining? That's going to get you more excited to make that move and give you a really good understanding as to what a move would look like. Here's the second part of that perspective. It's giving that perspective to your clients. Calling your clients up. Well, my old firm was like this, and I didn't like this, and I didn't like that, and I didn't like this. It's all me, 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 me. It's all about me. Let me tell you why I was miserable. Let me tell you why I didn't like it. That's what you ran from. Nobody wants to be at that party. Nobody. It's not a party, right? Everybody wants to be positive. Everyone wants to be excited. So when you call your clients, your verbiage needs to be, Jeff, I am so excited to call you today. I and my team have made a life-changing decision, which I am so excited to share with you because we are going to be able to service you and work with you and do things for you to deepen our relationship at a level that we have never been able to before. Let me tell you all about it. And now, all of a sudden, you can start talking to clients about things that you're going to be able to do. Maybe you're going to be working at a firm where you can actually interact on Instagram, Facebook, X, YouTube. Maybe now you can do a podcast. If you're making more money or you got transition assistants to move over, well, now guess what? Now you're in charging of hiring. You can bring on more staff. You're going to be able to service these clients on a different way. And if I'm the receiving end of that phone call, congratulations on you from having to get rid of all those headaches you just told me about. I'm happy for you. But when you bring me along for that ride and you tell me, Jeff, let me tell you how this is going to benefit you as a result. Wow, does that conversation have meaning? Boy, does that client say, send me the email now so I can Adobe sign it and get those accounts right back over to you.
Yeah, because they ultimately don't want to be in no man's land themselves, but ultimately you just want to accelerate their feeling that, hey, whatever you think, I'll follow you anywhere. You've been so great for us and our family. I trust your judgment. You get somebody there when you are very methodical and thoughtful and articulate around why you've done this. So again, backing up, client advisory council, the call rotation, the next 90 days, you're saying, we went through this exercise and we've come to this conclusion based on our clients' evolving needs that we need to be in an environment that is in their best interest. Our current environment served us incredibly well to this point, but we're lifelong planners. This is where it's going. We've done extensive due diligence. We couldn't be more excited about this new environment. List off a couple of key points and then read the room. So yeah, perfect. I'd like to talk a little bit about unintended consequences and benefits. I hear less and less about advisors having to contend with the SWAT team that rappels down from the roof and runs interference on the transition. I'm hearing less of that than I did 5, 10, 15 years ago. But blocking and tackling, I'd like your perspective on that, unintended consequences, but also unintended benefits, things that were like, wow, those are nice silver linings and pleasant things that came out of this. Can I get your perspective on those two?
For sure. So let's talk about the negative stuff. And these are the boogeymen, right? Is my firm going to sue me? Am I going to get a cease and desist? Am I going to get a do not contact? Very rare. Very rare. Protocol came out for a reason. Let's not go suing each other left and right. It doesn't make any sense. So are there going to be people in your office? I'm not going to paint everything with a silver lining. Are there going to be people in your office that are going to get assigned accounts if you're in a big firm? Probably. they'll probably reach out to your clients, right? Everyone knows that goes on. But if you've communicated your value, if you've done the steps that we talked about in this call, if you've developed a good value proposition, your clients are with you because it's you and not the logo, you're not going to have anything to worry about. Um, are there going to be surprises? Sure, of course. You're going to have people who you 100% thought were going to come and they don't. And you're going to have people who you never thought were going to come and they do. And the people that you don't want to have come will all universally follow you, by the way. They're all coming. The people that you do not want to have follow you are going to follow, bar none. But there is a bit of an irrational fear that there is going to be, like you said, a SWAT team that comes down and tries to prevent you from doing any sort of business. The best practices there is when you make a transition to a new firm, you will be assigned a transition team. And that team's job is to make sure that you're doing everything from compliance standards. So,
Right.
as long as you don't come in with a two-wheeler, put your filing cabinet on it and your hard drive and walk out, you're going to be fine. Follow what your transition team says. They've done it hundreds or thousands of times. You're going to be totally fine. As far as what I wasn't expecting, as long as you move for the right reasons. If you're moving just for economics, it's not a good reason. If you're just moving because there's a higher upfront check, not a good reason. Even if your pay is going up, not a good reason. My dad has a great line which says, the newness of the car will always wear off before the payment does. And it's a good line. Like, the check's nice, a higher payout is great. But at month 6, I always tell advisors, once you've been in a firm for 6 months, like the dust is settled, the accounts have moved over, and now you're 6 months in, that's when it's really going to hit you as to whether or not you made the right decision. That goes to partner versus parking lot. So that's incredibly important. When you move for those reasons, your happiness will get better. But I think the number one thing that an advisor will gain by moving is when you make a move and 80%, 90%, 100% of your clients come with you, you should feel so proud, because that means that those clients never cared about the logo. They truly value the relationship. And when I coach advisors through this, they always get nervous about the ones they're going to lose. Again, what am I losing versus what am I gaining? Well, I already said what you're gaining is that you know that those out of 100 clients, you know that 75 of those clients value you. And isn't that great? And by the way, the ones that leave behind, you can't get mad at somebody for not valuing a relationship at the same level that you did. You overvalued the relationship. It was that simple. So don't be mad, be happy. And knowing that now 100% of your book views you as one of the most important people in their lives. To me, that is the greatest silver lining you get out of when in a transition.
To dovetail your dad's philosophy, I've been saying for years that the relationship lasts long after you've spent the money you earned from establishing that relationship. So be methodical, counter any anticlimax and moving remorse. Just be absolutely diligent about how you approach this. I'd like your perspective on this because I've seen this, and this was a very pleasant surprise. I've been talking for years to advisors about establishing professional scarcity, where clients realize that your goal isn't to see how big you can get, it's how small you can stay. Carve out niches, be a specialist, not a generalist. And in addition to rejuvenating relationships and expanding their thinking around your capabilities, not inviting clients that are not a good fit, and growing down. And as you move and as the dust settles, saying to clients, look, a big byproduct of this transition for us was to not be all things to all people and to elevate the client experience for the clients that are a good fit for us. So part of our transition, we grew down from 350 clients to 150. And we can't wait to show you how you're going to benefit from that. It's not just what you say, it's what they hear. You have amplified their appreciation that, hey, I belong here. They're now going to be more able to sift out real prospects from the mass of suspects and make better introductions. So, Jeff, I'm curious as to your perspective on that, and if you've seen some variation of that occur as you've been in the sidecar with so many.
Absolutely. Having less clients is so opposite of how advisors have been brought up, right? It's the complete opposite. It's let's go out, let's get clients. But it's funny over the past few years, 10 years, it is amazing to me how many advisors are coming to the realization that that's what they need to do. Like you said, you can't be all things to all people. You can't, right? But if you ask, your clients should at least understand, though, the people that you do work with, right? Because if I don't know who you work with, if I don't know who your ideal client is, how am I ever going to refer you? Because you're dealing with everybody, right? And being able to pare that down, one, it creates a better service model. It creates more intimacy. It's the difference between having dinner with another couple and having a dinner with 40 other couples. How much are you going to be able to connect with the other couples at that dinner? And if you think about it from that perspective as an advisor and think, man, there's no way that you are connecting with 500 clients. It's not happening. You're not connecting with 300 clients. When you think about that connection, it has to be a smaller number. So the goal is to grow smaller, go further up on the high net worth chain. And it really is every advisor, whether it was through coaching or even through recruiting, when I talk to advisors, there is a specific niche. Everyone has somewhere that they kind of specialize in. You probably may not even recognize it. But when you go through a program like Pareto offers, guess what? You suddenly go, wow, I have a niche I didn't even know about.
Yeah.
So if you become that specialist instead of a generalist, people go to seek you out. It's the same thing with the doctor. If I got a foot problem, I'm not going to my general practitioner. I want to go to a podiatrist. I want to go to a heart surgeon. I want to go to the person that only deals with that, because as a retail client myself, boy, does that make me feel better. Because if I know that you deal exclusively with people that match these criteria, and I do, I don't even have to talk to you really about myself, because I feel that you already understand. And that is incredibly powerful. And during a transition, what a great time, if you haven't already, what a great time to begin to do some of that paring down and growing up.
Well, and the ripple effect. I talk to advisors who, when they move into a new environment, and they get excited about the idea of amping up their reputational equity, their thought leadership, their subject matter expertise on content around preparing errors and working with business owners and all of the many pieces of that puzzle. Search engine optimization. I talked to an advisor a couple of days ago, and he said, my business is so streamlined now, I think I can deploy a marketing campaign. And he was talking about hiring a cold caller to go out and chase and running ads. And I'm like, no, go on to AI right now and just give it this prompt. I'm a financial advisor in this city. Build me a search engine optimization campaign so I can be found by this type of client. And literally, Jeff, in seconds, that entire framework was presented. And I said to him, I said, not only is that incredibly powerful around being found by the right client, you couldn't have done that in your former environment. That would have not been allowed. And now here you are, and you can deploy this for a fraction of the cost of hiring and adding to your HR issues. Just set it and forget it 24/7, be found. It's so incredibly powerful. So, okay, I mean, we're scratching the surface here, but um, before I get to a call to action, because I want to remind everybody what resources are available. And Jeff, I'm sure you'd be open to have a conversation as a sounding board for people with no expectation it might go anywhere. Is that something you'd offer up?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. But here's my last question for you. So, As you've been talking, I have been hanging on to every word, but simultaneously, I've been looking at your backdrop there. There's a lot going on there. I see a Corvette. I see a boxing glove. I see some baseballs. But the two things that really get my attention, number one, a Boston Bruins goalie mask,
Yeah.
and a Patriots, the Patriots. What's he called again? The Patriots logo.
Just Pat the Patriot.
Oh, Pat the Patriot. The first Patriot I became aware of was John Hanna.
Oh gosh, yeah, great. One of the greats.
One of the greats. I saw him interviewed, and I think I was in my teens, I'm pretty sure, when I saw him interviewed. It might have been Howard Cosell or somebody. But I thought, what a thoughtful, articulate, interesting guy. And he was a lineman, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Yep.
cool. Now, beside whose goalie mask is that from the Bruins? Was that somebody's?
Yeah, it was signed. Oh gosh, I can't remember. I've had it for so long. It was the first goalie to score a goal in the NHL.
Oh, who was that again? That's a
And
good
of
factoid.
course, you had to ask the question, and I'm not going to remember now. But yeah, scored first goalie in the NHL to score a goal.
Wasn't Andy Moog?
No, although that was my goalie growing up, one of my favorite goalies of all time.
Well, and he used to be a goalie with the Oilers, right?
Yeah.
Pivot or a tandem with Grant Fuhr. Now, beside the mask, is that JFK?
No, that is not JFK. That's our current president.
Okay, awesome. Love it. Love it.
My boys have already decided which is going to be theirs. So that's a Mike Tyson glove. I think my favorite one is probably the baseballs in the back. That set of 3 baseballs on the right is the greatest MLB outfield of all time. We got Jim Rice, we got Freddie Lynn, and we got Dwight Evans. So we got a couple cool things, and my boys have already put tags on them upon my demise.
Okay, awesome. And I've got some very fond memories about Mariano Rivera, right? Enter Sandman, and that comeback, that hit against him that launched the Red Sox, to their first World Series in this era. That is very memorable for me. So, okay, awesome, Jeff. Okay, so where does somebody go from here? I think you asked Jeff Ambrose for the next 90 days campaign. Even if you don't move, this is a rejuvenator for your existing clients at a minimum for the 20% who represent 80% of your business. So that's number one. Number two, checklists or resources, considerations an advisor can make to get their head around due diligence. Is that something you'll offer up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then a sounding board conversation just to pop the hood and Temet Noske, know thyself. Like where are you? Where should you be? Just the whole sidecar experience just to get to know you and some of the considerations. You'll offer that up too?
Probably the best first step you can take.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Jeff, great job. Let's stir this pot on LinkedIn. Maybe we'll do some case studies, some peer sharing, best practices going forward. But this is a very good conversation. You covered a lot of ground. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Always On with Duncan MacPherson, where our objective is to enable professionals to always be working on their business and on themselves. Want to learn more about Duncan and his team? Visit ParetoSystems.com. Don't forget to click the follow button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the hosts and/or guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Pareto Systems. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only.